Hi everyone, welcome to episode 3 of our Delaware VDA webinar series called Data Retrieval. In our first 2 episodes, we discussed the Delaware VDA invitation process as well as scoping for the Delaware VDA. For this episode, I'm your host, Jameel Turner from Bailey Cavalieri, and I'm here with my colleagues, Max and Sarah from DMA. We're going to jump right into the nuts and bolts of data retrieval. So let's begin with the basics. What types of data should a company gather to kick off this process?
So what a company is looking for is to gather substantive data. And generally that would be in terms of disbursement listings, bank reconciliations, bank statements, accounts receivable data, and payroll data. Typically, that's what you would start looking at. And of course, if a company has any other types of data, like gift card data or anything of that nature, then that's what they would be looking to pool.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a lot of information. Once you know what data you need, Max, what resources are essential to retrieve it effectively?
Having access to major accounting platforms is essential in the Delaware VDA. This includes ERP systems, treasury systems. Also, it's important to have IT support. IT helps with extracting the historical detail. Without this, it's pretty hard to complete the retrieval process, and it can also cause noncompliance.
Absolutely. Who typically would have access to these systems and records, and why is it important to identify who can access bank statements and other reconciliation documents in the process?
So typically what you'd see is your finance folks who has access to those ERP systems. And also you have to keep in mind if the ERP systems, if there's more than one, say one was sunsetted, you'd also want to see who has access to those. It might not be the finance folks, it might be IT folks. So you have to be very careful when you say what access you have, because you definitely need to double check that with the organization before moving forward.
Sarah, thanks for that response. As a follow-up, do limitations like data retention periods or systems restrictions play a role into how that retrieval process plays out?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that's usually probably the biggest problem I see, and it's identified during the scoping period, is that if you've got a retention policy that is typically 7 years, that's going to restrict you from being able to get that full 10-year look back period. So essentially that and ERP systems conversions and lack of retrieval of that data is really going to impact how far back you can review. So if you really only have a certain amount of data, say 5 years or 7 years, that's all you've got to work with.
Wow, yeah, and I can see how that could really put holders in a bind.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about data sources, Max, which systems should be on the radar?
So it's a good question. You need to prioritize your accounts payable, payroll systems, treasury systems. All of these have payment activity within them. So that needs to be prioritized when it comes to a review.
Thank you. Are there external factors that could play into this data retrieval process as well? So how do third-party data sources or external vendors fit into the picture?
So that's another big problem that we typically see is companies using these third parties. Payroll is a big example that you use this third party to process your payroll, and they hold all sorts of records for you in which you need for this review. Also, what I'm seeing is that a lot of companies are using a shared services platform for accounts payable, right? So you have to keep that in mind. And then you've also got things like treasury, bank accounts, banks that hold information like statements, reconciliations. These are all things to consider when you're looking at your third parties and what they can supply you for data.
And I would imagine, your contracts with those third parties may or may not include these types of services. And so there's got to be some discussions around costs associated with working with those third parties for data retrieval.
Right. And I will say one thing, that if you do discontinue using that third party, they are not going to be as nice about providing you data that goes back as far as you're looking for, and there may be a big cost associated with that.
So, Max, from a quality assurance perspective, before the analysis begins, what data integrity checks should a holder be thinking about performing to ensure completeness and accuracy?
That's a great question. So what we normally do here is we reconcile each report, the bank totals, when within the bank statements. You do your duplicate checks, you do run your validations through your cross-system checks. All of those checks need to be done before any analysis is completed.
I want to thank you all for joining me today and providing those insightful comments on the data retrieval process. It's so important in the Delaware VDA process. And thank you all for joining us for episode 3 of our Delaware VDA webinar series. We look forward to seeing you join us for future episodes.